Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Everybody gets that way. And I made a mistake. I actually made a couple mistakes, and here I am going to explain to you what they are, the biggest building mistakes that I've made so far, and how to prevent yourself from making them in the future. And on top of that, I'm going to go through how I am going to correct that mistake with what I've already built. So, let's get into it. So I was going to start laying out the roads, because I want all of my builds to actually feel connected now, and then I realized that I should probably start building the in-between sort of houses, like the filler houses for all the area. And that's when I realized my first problem, and that is the scale of the builds themselves. If we look at this house, it is a very nice little house that I built off of actual blueprints I found on Reddit from I believe there's a Gothic farmhouse, and I love it. But then I realized that I built what I was calling a cathedral right next to it. And obviously this is not exactly cathedral-sized. It is a lot closer to medium church, I guess, which is fine, but next to them, the two next to each other really gives a terrible idea of the scale of the place and the scale of the different buildings. So that's my first problem. My second problem is I flew kind of over here to my little vantage point up here and was looking at the layout of the town itself and realized my second problem. I severely underestimated the scale of the town itself. Let me show you what I mean. My church here in the middle, which is also my storage room. I've got this little house here. I've got where the villagers are. I've got my iron place up there, woodshed, mine building, farmhouse, and they're all maybe, call it 100, 150 blocks from each other at most. And I plan to fill this area with buildings and little shops and stalls and things. If I'm gonna do that, I might be able to get, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 buildings between the pole barn and the actual church. And then, I've got this giant town center here, and I might be able to put something here, but not much. And then, you've got the farmhouse over here and the barn here. There's no space. And then I flew up here to get a better overhead view of it and realized that I have been limiting myself so much because I've got all of this space around me that I just for some reason completely wrote off. Let me take you to the seed before I built anything here. So this is my original spawn point, untouched, so there's not a thing already here. And if we come over here, this is the area that I've built everything in. Now, I loaded this, I rolled the seed a couple times before I started it, and found this little area, and thought that this little, hollow's the wrong term, but kind of valley, I guess, was a great spot for a town. So that's what I did. But what I didn't do is then take into account that this entire area is actually surrounded by mountains. So I just never looked at the rest of it. Just confined myself to that one little area and just never even bothered with looking at the rest of this area. So how do you avoid doing this in the future? Well, I recommend building a really, really tall observation point, assuming you found the location that you're looking for, and actually look a lot farther than you think, especially for something like this. So this world I intend to keep for a long time. So I should have actually prepared to build for a long time. If I'd done that, what I probably would have done is seen this little mound in the middle here, which I've started clearing off, by the way, and seen that this is a perfect place to build a castle or a keep or even my storage cathedral. And then I could have all the different sort of manufacturing and just buildings around here. And look at the amount of space that would have given me to work with. It's awesome. And to be clear, I'm still going to do that. I'm just going to have to rework a little bit of the story of this area. While I'm disappointed that I messed up the scale of the buildings themselves together, that is, I'm happy with the way that they all look, and I think they all look good together. But I think I should have taken into account the scale of them next to each other. So you've got the pole barn over here, which I think looks great. I do need to wax that roof though. But when I start putting in buildings and houses around it, one of them is going to look significantly smaller. And I don't know which one that is. And the example I used earlier, that house looks great. I love it so much. But right next to this church, it makes the church look tiny, and it makes the house look massive. And then this barn. This barn, I think, was the first thing I built here, which I like, but it's not exactly scaled to anything else. I think this is probably the worst scale. This building is completely on its own. Fortunately, the ironworks is so far up the mountain and sort of set aside from everything else that it really kind of isn't noticeable. Now, what am I going to do about this? For starters, I'm not going to tear everything down and rebuild the scale. I like the builds, I like them the way they are, and I think keeping them is going to be a good reminder of where I started and where I'm going. But what I will have to do is kind of plan out this entire area very differently because I now have the rest of the future sort of scaled out. And I think that's going to be a much better scale to begin with, if only I had actually begun with it. Now, as far as talking about the scale of the town itself, obviously that is probably going to quadruple, judging by the amount of space that I have all the way around here. How am I going to fit my original plan of having this being the center of town, now being just the south wing, I think? Yes. I haven't completely figured out the lore correction now, but what I think I'm going to do is have this be sort of a cross between the old town and sort of the commercial district, I suppose. Commercial might be the wrong term. It might be more industrial, you know, where you've got the ironworks, you've got the pole barn, you've got the old barn, and all of those being this close in this center. I think it'll make more sense to just say the people who lived here built this first and then realized that they were going to expand all the way over there. So I think that's the way I'm going to do that scale. As far as the building scale in the future, that's going to be its own thing that I'm going to have to work out myself. However, I think it will work. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about by repurposing the history, I suppose, take my little farmhouse over here. Originally, this was just the farmhouse. I was going to have the giant farm going out back this way. But that doesn't really feel like it fits anymore. So what I might do is say I might decide this is going to be one of those thrift stores run out of a house. Because where I'm from, that's pretty common in a lot of those old towns. And let's take the barn over here, for example. As of right now, I was going to have this be the barn for the farmhouse with the farm here. But what I might do is say that this is like a retro authentic barn where they sell like produce out of, which is actually kind of also pretty normal where I live, where they go for like a rustic feel for basically just selling produce. Basically just, this is how I messed up building my town, and this is how I'm going to fix it. If this was moderately helpful for you, or at least informative, if you could leave me a subscribe and a like, that'd be nice. Thanks, maybe? So I hope that was helpful. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I've been Chuck Ross, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. I can't believe I'm opening with a Hannah Montana reference. Well, here we go.